This is Adam Kokesh here at Rocky Mountain Puff in Breckenridge, Colorado. I'm here with Sheriff Mack, former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona, and author of The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, a book that has really sparked a movement in reasserting the rights of county officers, especially the sheriffs, and asserting their superiority as the highest law enforcement officials in the land within their counties. Sheriff, tell us about that movement and the significance of that book.
Well, I've been thrilled with it. The book has done over 115,000 copies in 3 years. And there's people that, go to publishers that, this is all just self-published and promoted at my speaking engagements and on my website. And the American people really got behind this movement because they wanted sheriffs to know and understand their duty and responsibility to protect the citizens from what this notion called from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And so for any sheriff just to think, well, all I have to do is, make DUI arrests and serve papers for the courts and, fight the drug war and all that glamorous stuff that you see on TV. But then they'll say to somebody, yeah, well, if the government comes in and cheats you and robs you and destroys your family and business, then that's okay. I have to go along with that. And the book is about, no, you don't. Okay, and so the book is about keep your oath, know and understand your own power, and finally interpose on behalf of the people.
And this book has created an incredible outreach tool for so many people that want their county or their local law enforcement agents to understand these concepts and protect them from those other powers. But
right.
There's something you might not know about Sheriff Richard Mack here that I'm particularly jealous of, but he actually used to be a professional marijuana smoker. Would you explain how that situation came about?
It's a good thing my mother's not here to hear you say that, because she's probably turning over in her grave listening to that. But what you say is partly true.
Oh, okay.
I used to be an undercover narcotics cop.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
He's better now.
A repentant narc.
He's repentant.
Yeah, but it really changed my life, and it got me going towards figuring out what's wrong.
Hold on, for our audience, step back and tell us like what agency you were working for and the kind of circumstances that you created as an undercover. You were basically conducting entrapment, correct?
There was probably some of that, but I was only contacting people who were already dealing drugs. I mean, I didn't get them to deal drugs. Okay.
And how did you do that? What was your MO?
We painted up an old police car and made it a cab, and so I was my nickname was Cabby.
So it was a regular police car, like with lights on top. Did you like paint over the lights?
Paint over that, and we put a Provo cab. It said Provo cab. I was with the Provo Police Department in Utah.
Okay, but you had like all of the gear and all of the equipment inside, so people would have to be like really stoned to get in and not notice that this was not a regular cab to begin with, right?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a regular cab.
Okay.
But it looked like an old police car too, but a lot of old police cars are used as cabs, so that's nothing unusual.
And it worked, right?
It worked. It totally worked, and we arrested about 70 people off of it, and we got people, dealing cocaine, but I'll tell you right now, 90% of the arrests were for marijuana. And so after the undercover assignment, I started studying marijuana and the drug war and what prohibition was all about. I studied prohibition back in, the 1920s and 30s, and we finally came to our senses and said prohibition against alcohol is creating a worse problem. But now today we think there's magic. And see, that's why I wrote the new book, The Magic of Gun Control, because I'm talking about the magic of all the stupid policies in America today, and especially Washington, D.C., that, like, gun control has never worked anywhere throughout world history, but it will now because it's America. And we're supposed to believe these polymagicians, and that's a new word I made up for the book, polymagicians. And that's, of course, a politician and a magician put together. They want you to believe the illusion instead of believing history. And that we're magic. Of course, it'll be okay now because this is America and it's magic. And so, yeah, gun control will make you safer. It will protect your freedom and liberty. It will reduce crime. And that has never happened throughout world history. Never.
Do you think I'm too stoned that I wouldn't notice you changing the subject? All right, we're here talking guns and weed with Sheriff Richard Mack, no, we got to tell the story. We got to tell this story though, because you tried to tell me this morning that your first time smoking weed was actually while you were undercover, right?
I was a cop. The first time I ever smoked marijuana in my entire life, and the only time I was a cop.
Well, okay, but it wasn't okay. I thought when I first heard that, I was like, "Wait, that's fucking stupid." You're undercover. You're trying to maintain your cool, and you're smoking weed for the first time in your life. But no. I was corrected soon after hearing that he actually got some extensive practice warming up, smoking weed in the department in a controlled environment before. And I can imagine this scenario. You're a young law enforcement officer. You're eager to make your name and build your career, and you're thinking, I'm gonna arrest everybody for weed. I'm gonna put hundreds of people in jail. I'm gonna ruin all these lives. And then you go, all right, well now I'm going undercover. Now I'm going undercover, and I have to expose myself to this dangerous substance, and I'm a brave psychonaut trying this out. And then you smoked it, and then
I have to correct you there. I never exposed myself. But yes, but it changed my life. It taught me that the people that were doing it were good people. And I recognize that we were spinning our wheels and wasting our time doing this, catching the same guys over and over kind of thing, and that it provided no benefit to the community, what we were doing. And then I started studying the Constitution, and I put all of that together, prohibition, the Constitution, and the proper role of law enforcement. And I even wrote a book called The Proper Role of Law Enforcement, and it was a stem from all of this. And you put all of that together, I asked myself the ultimate question: does government, and do we really want 700,000 police officers hell-bent on protecting us from our own appetites and addictions and our own stupidity? Now, I will say that I think doing drugs is stupid, but do we have the right to make that against the law and throw you in jail because you did it?
Well, you enjoy a glass of wine occasionally, don't you?
No, I don't drink at all.
No, not at all. Damn it, we can't play that card on the sheriff. Okay.
Not only that, I don't even like prescription drugs.
Good.
A doctor prescribes me a pain medication, and literally, I broke my foot once, and the doctor prescribed. I tossed it. I'm not going to do drugs. I don't want to do drugs, and sometimes they might be helpful, but I just think we need to really be careful with that at every level, from pharmaceuticals to the illicit drugs. But I do not believe in making those illegal and throwing people in prison. I will tell you right now, and I've said this in my books, we will never arrest away the drug problem. And we need to be realistic in saying, what do I as a cop have a right to do to you? Do I have a right to take away your liberty because you smoke pot? And the answer is flat out no. I don't have that right. And the cops that believe that in this country have been brainwashed into doing that. And that was one of the reasons why I left the police department in Utah and moved home to Arizona and ran for sheriff. I wanted to run my own department. And even then, we were still enforcing some of the drug laws, and including marijuana. And it took me a while to understand that these victimless crimes. No, I don't want to participate in that, and I don't support the drug war anymore. And I don't use drugs, and I hope none of you do either. But that's your choice. And if we lived in a free country, we would make that choice for ourselves.
Well, it seems like using chemicals, using substances, using food and everything else that we put on our bodies to manipulate our body chemistry is just part of the human condition. If anything, this is a wise word here for all Americans, that whatever it is, we should be more conscientious about what we put in our bodies. But sure, it's fun to see and hear a story like this where you see that one of the consequences of the drug war is that you have police officers all over the country in official buildings wearing their fancy costumes, smoking weed, getting high as warm-up for being an undercover cop. But you had another observation that I think was really important to share here, because I made the assertion that possibly as we see marijuana becoming more and more legal, and as we see in Massachusetts and Colorado and California at least, there seems to be a distinct separation from the prison industrial complex when most cops just don't pursue individual users. They're not playing the numbers game for marijuana anymore. And I'd like to think, great, so we're going to make it harder for them to fill the prison cells, but you would disagree.
They're going to continue to fill them up, and the prisons are such big business, and I've seen that firsthand. I used to run a jail. I used to be in charge of a jail, and first of all, we can't even keep drugs out of our jails and prisons. You know, how ridiculous is that? The most secure place on the planet, and we can't keep drugs out of those.
Wait, people do drugs in jail?
Jail and prisons, yes, absolutely. Now, I'd like to think that they didn't do it in mine, but I did make smoking illegal, and so most of the prisoners were so worried how to get cigarettes that they forgot about the other drugs. And so, yeah, they smuggled cigarettes mostly in my jail. But
how does that happen naturally? What is the main mechanism of drugs getting into penitentiaries?
Well, through visitations and also through jailers.
Corruption.
Yeah, sure. The whole system's pretty corrupt anyway, but yeah, there's always some prison guards that can be bought off. I mean, when you're making $35,000 a year, and in fact, the salary for the prison guard is not even more what it costs the taxpayers to keep a prisoner in that prison.
Okay, so you are making the assertion, though, that even if marijuana was effectively legal and everybody who was in jail, like say we elected even someone like Ron Paul or Gary Johnson, who would pardon all nonviolent drug offenders in jail, right, and would set them free, you're saying that the system is set up in such a way that those cells would be filled because the incentive is so strong. And I challenge you on this. I said, well, what are they going to do? There aren't that many heroin users and cocaine users in America to make up for all the pot users that they can't arrest anymore. And we were talking about the very scary possibility that the existing laws about controlling alcohol would be used to prosecute people at a higher level, make more DUIs that would lead to jail terms, but even like drunk in public, things that might be minor offenses being turned into plus resisting, plus whatever.
And some of the newer drugs too, bath salt and some of the others, they're going to start making those all illegal, and they're going to find a way to fill these prisons up. What embarrasses me, what I find very shameful, is that America is supposed to be the freest country on the face of the planet, yet we incarcerate more people here per capita than any other country in the world. And that should be closely looked at. And not only that, but the extraordinary incarceration of minorities. And so I think all of that needs to be looked at. We have a lot of problems here, and we need to straighten them out. I believe, and I've written in my books the same thing, that we're going to find the solutions to all of this if we get back to the basics of our Constitution.
Well, that brings me to the last point here about the drug war. And as a libertarian who cares about ending the drug war, not just so that I can smoke pot and not have to worry about the cops, you know, because I believe in freedom, and I believe in the concept of self-ownership. I believe that we all, as free, beautiful, independent human beings, have the right to decide what we put in our own bodies. And I pull my hair out when I see that there's so much good work being done to legalize marijuana, but people aren't getting this point that you have to assert these fundamental truths and end the drug war, not just the war on some drugs, but not just legalize marijuana, but really end this scam that has allowed the prison industrial complex to metastasize.
Right, I totally agree with that, and we've got to get back to some basic fundamental principles of freedom. And those people who are fighting to legalize pot because they just want to get high, or they love marijuana and they love their doobies, then they're doing it the wrong way.
They're just slaves begging for another permission.
This is a freedom issue. And if government doesn't have the right to do this to me, then that's what we should be taking into consideration. That should be our goal. Get government out of our lives, off our backs. Every peace officer in this country wants to find out, is hell-bent to find out what you have in your pocket, what you have in your glove compartment, what you're carrying in your trunk, how much cash you have, and what you keep in your home. And that's wrong. And we need to get back to really protect and serve, uphold and defend the United States Constitution that we swore a solemn oath to do. Let's keep our word now.
Right on. And your website is?
SheriffMack.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Richard Mack.